What's up, you amazing hacker? I hope you're doing well today. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to dig deeper, and I'm going to give you guys some tips. Let's get right into it, shall we? We're starting off with a little bit of a tip that I like to give everybody, and it might sound a little bit weird, but I want you to test the application and test and test and test until you get absolutely bored with it. Because when you're bored, your mind starts coming up with crazy stuff, and that's what I call out-of-the-box thinking. You have to get to know your application first before you can start your out-of-the-box thinking. That's pretty logical. How can you think out of the box if you can't even think inside of the box? So that's one of the tips I want to give you guys. Get to know your application, get really, really bored with it, and then you'll start thinking of some scenarios. Just try to execute them, and maybe some good bugs will come off that. For me personally, the best bugs come when I'm really, really bored with my target, because then I start thinking of crazy stuff. So really interesting thing for me, get bored with your application. Now, I've mentioned a few times that you should get to know your application as well. A few things that I can give for tips as well for that. Now, the first thing I want to do to get you guys to know your applications is I would highly recommend to read your JavaScript files and read them carefully. There are a few tools you can use to read those JavaScript files, like Link Finder you can use and GUA. I'll put the links in the description as well. Those tools are really, really useful for me. Why is that? Because a lot of JavaScript files will contain hidden URLs, hidden endpoints that are not visible from your main website. And those link finders will allow you to extract all of those different URLs and GUA as well. And you can then test on those URLs as well. Now, that's a little bit of thinking outside of the box because everybody can run those tools, but I would highly recommend that you also read your JavaScript files. A couple of reasons for that. First of all, your JavaScript file is going to contain a whole lot of things, like, for example, functions that you can maybe manipulate or use, like cross-site scripting filters. There might be a function in there that filters out certain characters, like the less than sign or the greater than sign, and you can read that whole filter and see how you can evade that filter. Now, front-end validation is not really that useful, but sometimes you have a stored cross-site scripting attack vector, and it might get filtered out by one of these functions, and then you know what to do because you can maybe subvert that function. Another thing you can often find in JavaScript files is stuff like API keys, secrets, so you will have to look a little bit. You will have to do some control Fing and go through it, maybe read it completely, even if it's like a few thousand lines. There might be interesting stuff in there. I keep telling you guys, JavaScript is a gold mine, so spend your time on that JavaScript file. Now, what I also want to tell you guys, if you really don't like wasting your time on those JavaScript files, run those tools and move on, because if you don't like something, you're not going to do it for very long. That's really important that you like doing that stuff, of course. If you don't want to spend too much time on the JavaScript file, another thing I would really highly recommend is that you completely read the manual. Now, there are a couple of nuances that I want to make with that. Not every program, of course, has a manual. So when you don't have a manual, you're going to have to just get to know the application on your own. That means testing it a whole lot, trying to see different things, trying if they work. But if it has a manual, and for example, the manual says you cannot do this, try doing it. And if it's something that, for example, deactivates some super admin user, like the manual can say you cannot deactivate super admins, and if you can do that, you have a valid bug on your hands, because that's a pretty big security issue, of course. And one thing that's also very important about getting to know your application, you have to really get to know your application to know the impact of what you're finding. That's something a lot of people don't see, but if you, for example, report a click jacking bug, it can be useless or it can be really impactful depending on the website. If you report a cross-site scripting attack, again, it can be really impactful or it cannot matter at all. So it's really important that you get to know your application very, very well. Now, those are some tips I have for you guys. If you enjoyed them, you know what to do. I would really like to know what your tips on digging deeper are, because you guys have awesome tips all of the time, so keep doing that. I would also like to thank my Patreons. You guys are amazing. I don't know why you keep supporting me. I'm just a rat on the screen, so I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye everyone.